My name is Jason. I am the talking head at the Art of Selling Art, which is a membership, a platform, and a launchpad for artists trying to make a career out of their art. Now, this tutorial is for the NFTs for Artists video series, which is a series that goes from beginning to end, what is blockchain, to how do you create and maintain communities. But because I love Cardano so much, and because I believe in the future of Cardano, the Cardano portion of the NFT series, at least the minting stuff like this, is free. So I hope you can check it out. Now, I am going to mint a piece on Jpg.Store. And Jpg.Store is the largest NFT marketplace on Cardano. And they recently opened up the ability for people to mint one-of-ones or to individually mint NFTs on their platform. So I want to go over all of that. And this is what we're going to do. So when I was in the military, they said, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So tell them what you're going to tell them. First, we're going to talk about preparing the JPEG. How do you prepare your files, your art files, for minting on blockchain? And then we're going to talk about crafting context. Now, context is something that I personally think is very important for art. And in my experience of 10 years of selling art for a living, I know that collectors really attach themselves to the story. They're caught by the visual. They are captured by the story. The two together mirror something inside of them, and then they collect the art because it becomes a part of them, because it looks like a part of them to their eyes. So context is super important. There's someone's going to argue with me in the comments, and they're going to say the buyer or the audience, they create the context. And you're not wrong, but I think you're wrong. So that's my thing. We're going to craft context for this image. And then we're going to mint it on Jpg.Store, which on Jpg.Store is going to involve creating a new policy ID and a new collection name, and then minting the artwork. After that, we're going to talk about pricing. And there's a whole module specifically dedicated to how to price your work. And there's a lot more that goes into it than simply know your worth. And that's going to go over like how to map out a year's earnings and what do you expect to earn, and how are some ways that you can work backwards from your goals into pricing your art, editions, quantity, quality, etc. So, but for this, we're going to go briefly into my thoughts on why I'm minting it this way and why I'm putting the price on it the way I am. And then it's going to be off to the races. So, off to the community to check out the work and maybe collect a piece. So let's start with creating the JPEG or preparing your file. And this is where I get a lot of questions about how big a file should I do, and what about IP rights, and blah, blah, blah. And there's a whole module dedicated to IP. And so we're only going to touch on it briefly here. So this is my picture, and it's called, it used to be called Kahala Ashes. It's called Journey, and it's part of my Lonely Boat collection, and which has its own context and its whole story. But basically, I like taking pictures of boats, and this photograph was created before I knew I liked taking pictures of boats and creating these sort of lonely boat scenes, these solitude, very inner development thinking pieces. So anyway, this piece is called Journey, and I photographed it in Hawaii. Now, the actual file is like 2 gigabytes, and I think when I hit this thing, it's 5,800 pixels. But I want to produce this at a quality that people can experience and enjoy on blockchain, but not a quality so high that people can print it, because this is a limited edition artwork in real life. It has a physical established edition with its own value, so therefore no rights are given for people to print and reproduce, commercialize, or anything like that. Now, just a quick look. This is the edit. So preparing the image, I started with this in I started with even worse than this. Whenever I shot this, I think it was in 2012. And then just adding some layers. These are just groups of edits, removing distractions, and then adding some love and some light. Removing this thing, whatever that is. It's a logo that I put here, which is definitely not necessary and wanted on the blockchain. I'm glad I caught that. and then adding some more light and then removing some distractions. So quick look at how I made this piece. What I'm going to do is export it at the quality like I said. So, all right, so here is the export window for Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is turn the quality all the way up. It's going to be a JPEG, maximum quality, and I'm going to click this box for sRGB because most of this work is going to be seen or on the internet, and the internet only shows a color space that's called sRGB, which is a lot smaller, and there's a lot less colors in sRGB than there is in ProPhoto or Adobe RGB. And if you export in Adobe or ProPhoto, it's not going to look right on the internet. So you're going to export as an sRGB file, which yes, it has less colors, but that's just how people are going to experience it. And I'm going to export this at 4,000 pixels. Why? I like the idea of having a 4K image so that whoever owns this piece, and it's going to be a one of one, will be able to experience it in very good quality, whether they put it on a digital display or they're showing it in the metaverse. Now, if you're in the metaverse with a goggle on, the world is big. And so you could put this piece up huge and experience it with really good quality at 4,000 pixels. So I'm exporting it at 4,000 pixels. I'm doing bicubic smoother for this image instead of bicubic sharper because it's an older image and I don't want to crunch the pixels. So this is just something you learn about when you get experienced in doing this stuff. But you can choose either. In general, you would choose bicubic sharper so that as the pixels get brought down or interpolated, you don't lose all of that sharpness. And then I'm just going to save this. So before it was a 17 megabyte image. Now when I save it, it's going to be smaller. Okay, so image is prepared. It's 4,000 pixels. It's not so big that people can print it, but it's a really high quality that it will look good in whatever display. And now I'm going to mint. Okay, so I'm already logged in, or Web3 logged in with my wallet to JPEG. I can't hide the quality or quantity of the stuff in my wallet this way, but whatever, it's a hot wallet. And let's go over a few things. So Jpg.Store doesn't have the typical setup that you would see on other marketplaces where artists have their own pages and then all of the collections are sort of listed underneath. Instead, like everything else on Cardano, it's identified by policy ID. So this is my Genesis collection on Jpg.Store. And I did these three pieces because they're yellow, like JPEG's logo and JPEG's colors, and I thought that would be really cool, and I wanted to put a Genesis up. They're all listed at 777, and you can find that in the links below. But this is one policy ID. So if I were to create this piece inside of this collection, which I thought about doing because the colors match, I would just go up to here and create, and then I would create or mint the JPEG, and it would show up here with this policy ID. But because it's part of a bigger collection or its own collection called the Lonely Boats, I am going to, for the sake of demonstrating and because it all lines up, I'm going to create my own policy, a new policy inside of Jpg.Store, which will create a new collection. So let's get started. I'm going to go to Creations, and then I'm going to go to Mint a New Collection. Single NFT, bulk, and large collections are coming, but I'm a one-of-one artist or a small edition artist, and I'm going to do this. So you have the option to create a new policy ID or use an existing policy ID. If you wanted to use it, like I said, the JMFA collection, then you could go back and create a piece inside of there. But instead, I'm going to create a new policy ID. And we're just going to go through the steps and I'll explain them as we go. So the collection name is going to be Lonely Boats. The collection description, well, shoot, I didn't think that much about it. So let's do it now. Okay, so I added a collection description. And again, context is super important. I don't want to lecture you about it here, but if you want to hear more about context and developing stories like this, then join the Art of Selling Art. I'm happy to help you develop this sort of thorough explanation of what's inside of you. But the Lonely Boat collection, The lonely boats are the best example of an aesthetic I've developed called comfortable isolation. I seek to create spaces where one can feel comfortable enough to confront their thoughts, beliefs, and inner demons, a comfortable place for growth. So that describes sort of the context of how I shoot these images, or what I'm looking for when I'm shooting and why I'm looking for it, all in just 2 sentences. Now, next is you need to create a royalty percentage and a royalty address. Now, 10% is pretty standard and accepted for royalties. I think you could raise the percentage if you are going to price your work lower, and vice versa. But I think 10% is a pretty good bottom for royalties. And that's how on blockchain you can create generational wealth, because as pieces get traded, you continue to get paid no matter what. Now, you need an address for people to send that to. So I'm going to go to my wallet on Eternal. There's a whole tutorial inside of the NFT video series for how Eternal works and all of that stuff, and makes sense in terms artists can understand. But I'm just going to go to transactions, receive, and then I'm going to paste that right in here. Okay, is this collection NSFW, not safe for work, i.e. nudes? No. So I've already filled this out on other forums, and thankfully it remembers. So here's my Discord and my website, and I don't have a Medium article. Next, you got to upload some images, of course. So drag and drop files here, collection image, and then collection banner. Now, the banner should obviously be panoramic, and the collection image is square or work, and it looks like it will automatically crop these for me. So I have a piece called Safe at Harbor that is panoramic and would work great for a collection banner. And then for a drag and drop upload here, I think that I will use Solitude. Actually, yeah, I'm going to use Solitude. This is one of my most popular images from the Lonely Boat collection. So, and these two, of course, you want them to align. And that's what it looks like. I didn't know it would upload so fast. Then I'm going to hit save. And that's that. Now you can create your asset. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to find whatever this new policy ID is, and we're going to get it verified. Because on Jpg.Store, there's tens of thousands of assets, and you want to have this little check mark right here. And I'll show you how to do that once this thing is minted. So, continuing the thoughts, I am going to upload this, please. Please complete collection setup first. I did. Oh, it didn't happen. Yep. I should have got a signature request. So I'm going to sign this. Hit sign. Okay, so now that that's collected or created, and we go back to my main page for my profile, you can see the creations I've made. Now, I made a mistake earlier, or something happened, but it turns out to be a good learning opportunity. Now, the first Lonely Boat collection, I tried to mint it, and the images didn't take, and I don't know what that is, but it still shows up right here. This is the policy ID. So luckily, or thankfully, I can hide this collection so that it doesn't show up when people come and look at it. It'll only be visible to me. And boom, it's gone. So I verified that by putting in my, by signing with my wallet. So now I can add an NFT. And we're gonna just go through the process of adding that NFT. Now, I guess this is a good place to talk about creating context. So let's take another look at our image. This piece is called Journey, and it's part of my Lonely Boat collection, which is already on my website with the story. So I'm going to go back to my actual IRL website, and here's a look at Journey, which I photographed in Kahala, Hawaii, and it has a story here. Now, JPEG, when you mint like this, so if you go back and you look at the NFT Maker tutorial, you'll have a little more flexibility with your metadata. And I have it on good word that Jpg.Store is going to work on this part too. You can only fit 64 characters. So the story for this piece is: some legends speak of a skiff or a boat arriving at the shores of your life to take you to the next world. I was asked to photograph the place where a loved one's ashes were spread. I found outriggers when I arrived. The journey continues Hawaii style. So that's some of the context behind creating this image. And again, this was created before I discovered that I actually had a Lonely Boat collection, and that it was a thing that really fit into the core of what I want to create in my visual aesthetic. So I need to condense this into a 64 character description for Jpg.Store. What I like to do when I have to do things like this is I go to this character counter, which you can just Google character counter and you arrive at a myriad of them. This is the original description. Let's try to figure out how we can make this into 64 characters. Woohoo! I did it on the first try. So I said that I went from this, which was a story about a vessel or boat coming to the shore of your life, and it takes you off into the afterlife. Remove it, and I got 61 characters. So I'm gonna add a period here with 62 characters. A vessel arrives at the shores of life. The journey continues. I'm gonna copy that, and you'll see where we use that in a second. So let's fill it out. The display name is going to be Journey. Oops. Journey. The asset name is going to be Journey. And then the description is going to be this, and it fits into 64 kilobytes. If you go over, it tells you that it has to not be so long. Let's drag and drop this file for upload. And then here is where you can add your traits and your metadata. Now these are the searchable portions of your work, and they're also where collectors and on blockchain anyway, some added value can be created with your JPEG. So I'm going to add a property, and actually here, let's take a look at one. Now, Pool PM is the blockchain explorer for Cardano. And when you put in the policy ID or asset ID, you can get to the actual minted object and see what's about it. So this is where people come to view the blockchain stuff. It shouldn't say quantity too, so we're going to go figure that out here in a moment. But here's the artwork. This is what it looks like on chain, and these are all the characteristics that I added as traits. So I'm going to do that again for Journey. So here we go. Add a property. Okay, so you saw me go back and forth there. It was sped up, but what I wanted to do was maintain some consistency between my other assets and this asset. So for traits and metadata, I have artist. You'd be surprised how often you look at NFT metadata on blockchain and on Cardano, and it's not immediately clear who took this image. So artist, camera, location, dimensions, which is something that people like to see, and then copyright. Now this is important because it seems to always be in question who has what rights, and there's a lot of people collecting NFTs who are not familiar with copyright and the art world, and they think that owning the NFT gives them rights to the image. It does not. And there's a whole module on copyright in the video series, but briefly, to make it clear for me and in this image, the artist retains all rights to this image. So the owner basically has just rights to view it and to display it, not to print it, not to reproduce it. They can sell it because they own it, but that's about it. And next thing is just to mint the NFT. All right, when you get to this stage and you've signed your transaction, it's minting. Again, this process can take anything from a few seconds to a few minutes to longer. It depends on the load on the blockchain. The difference between Cardano and, say, Ethereum is that you're only going to pay a standard fee for these transactions on blockchain instead of a variable gas fee. So transaction fee on Cardano, gas you're paying on ETH, where you will have to pay based on demand. This is just time weighted based on demand. So I'm just going to hit done. And there it is. So the piece is minted, but it's still not listed for sale. You have to, again, so you mint it is one transaction, listing it for sale is the other. Now, here you have a variety of options, right? You can price this in so many different ways. However, there's a lot more to pricing than simply knowing your worth, which is the default answer you'll receive whenever you ask this question in anywhere, right? But the idea is not how much would someone be willing to pay for it. It's how much do you think it's worth? And you can figure out that value based on a number of factors. How long you've been on blockchain, how long you've had an art career, and your prior sales record. In addition to that, you can also add your goals for the year, and then dividing that up by how much you make and how much you want to make and how much you can create and blah, blah, blah. There's a whole module on pricing to talk through these different ways of looking at the price of your work inside of the NFT series, which again is linked below. It's launching on the 22nd. So if you're watching this before the 22nd of August, then it may not be open yet. So now I need to price my work. Now I have a collectorship already, and I have people who are looking at my stuff. And what I want to do for the Jpg.Store for this piece is to leave it as offer only. So once I get this policy ID verified, which is what I'm going to show you next, I'm going to leave this piece without a listed sale, and I'm going to let JPEG's offer system dictate the price, at least for a little while. I want to see what people are going to offer for this piece as I put it out into the world and talk about it more. And that goes into marketing and building community, which is, again, is another module that we can talk about in there in depth. But for now, I'm going to leave this as offer only. And then I'm going to go share it with my inner circle of collectors, my wider circle of collectors, and then the overall market in through Spaces and through Twitter and through email and through all the other channels that I use to connect with people. So the last step, we've made it, is to verify your policy ID. In order to verify your collection, you can go up here and go to verify collection, and it brings you to an FAQ and a process about how you can verify the collection. It used to be that you had to fill out a form, but JPEG has upgraded, and they now have a whole process where you just go to your collection edit page, and then you hit the verify my collection button. And this says it takes about 48 hours. So going over here, I went to creations, and then I went to edit info. And then down here, it has everything that I put in, and I go to verify my collection. Here's my policy ID. And then it asks you for a collection URL, so a custom URL. So we're going to go Jpg.Store, JPEG. When you start filling it out, it shows you that it's going to be jpgstore.collection/lonely boats. Just lowercase. It's probably not case sensitive anyway. Lonely boats. And then I'm going to hit save. And that was super simple. They said it's going to take 48 hours. So check back in 48 hours or look at the link to this collection that's posted below, and you'll see that there'll be a check mark there in 48 hours. That is it for minting on Jpg.Store. In a day or two, this collection will be verified. And if you watch this whole thing, which I guess if you listen to me now, you did, I hope you have a better idea of what is involved in exporting your images, uploading them, deciding on a price, thinking about utility, thinking about copyright, and things like that. If you have questions, please join the Artist Selling Art Discord. There are free public channels as well as channels for verified NFT video series holders or full TASA members, which is all involved in there. But the public channels are there. They're great for questions. You can share your work. You can ask for reviews. You can share your wins, and you can learn from all of the other artists who are participating on blockchain with their art, both on Cardano and on other blockchains. And of course, I'm in there almost every day, and I try to answer some questions, mostly taking care of the people in the video series and in the TASA membership, but they know so much. It really is a community, and all the artists are there to help each other and to grow together.